From that first impression when a customer walks through your door, to how well your assets perform every day, you're the ones leading the way. Today, you're facing a changing world, which means you're tackling more challenges than ever before. You're embracing the unknown, making strategic decisions, and finding fresh, innovative ways to run your business. You've risen to the challenge, you have momentum, and no one is going to slow you down. And you know transparency and data are key to moving your business forward. ServiceChannel provides you with the insights you need to reduce costs, improve quality, ensure compliance, and be confident in every decision so you can focus on what's ahead. ServiceChannel is with you every step of the way. We will continue to move forward. We will build a better future together.
Thanks for joining us today for our session, Tactical to Strategic, Shifting the Focus for Provider Management. I'm Vijay Ramakrishnan from ServiceChannel and your host for today's session. Today, we'll have conversations with two experts who have deep experience in provider management, Deb Millete and James Hemsarth from ServiceChannel. Provider management is one of the hottest topics in our industry, and I think you'll find their perspectives insightful. To set the stage for these conversations, I wanted to share some insights from our platform data on provider performance. On this table, you see some important speed and quality measures for plumbers in the United States. Metrics like average resolution time and first-time completion rate. The rows of the table represent levels of performance, and what stands out is the spread of performance between top performers and bottom performers. When plumbers perform their best, they're 4.5 times faster and twice as effective. And when all these elements of speed and quality are put together, it can make a huge difference. Take, for example, a broken water line that's ground your kitchen to a halt, or an overflow that's ruining your sales floor. These performance differences can mean the difference between having those kinds of issues fixed in 4 hours versus 8 hours. Given those stakes, how can you manage providers to ensure their performance moves from the bottom towards the top or stays at the top of this chart? How do you prevent tactical day-to-day issues from taking up all the bandwidth you have for managing providers? And how can you engage with providers and have regular, productive conversations that really move the needle? Our experts today will be addressing all three of these questions and showing you how they've leveraged the controls and insights from ServiceChannel to create the time and the tools to have strategic conversations. Let's start things off with Deb Millete. She's got some great experience to share on the role of metrics and insights in shifting to a more strategic approach to provider management. Deb, thanks so much for joining us. I'm really looking forward to our conversation today in getting ready for this call. I just love the insights that you had to share. Why don't we kick these things off here by just having you introduce yourself to the audience?
Yeah, of course. Great. Of course, my name is Deb Millete, and I have been in the facility industry for over 25 years at CVS Health. When I was there, I was responsible for the finances and the operations of the facility management department, which was responsible for about 12,000 locations. CVS partnered with ServiceChannel over 8 years ago, and I led the digital facility transformation for CVS. And so today I'm here at ServiceChannel, and I'm the director of facility digital transformation, and my role is to help others do the same with their facilities.
Great, 12,000 properties. Every time I hear that, I'm just, just taken aback by the scale of it. Deb, now today I know you want to share some best practices that reflect, a formal approach, you took at CVS to be more strategic about provider management. Like, what were some of the core pieces of that formal approach?
Yeah, definitely. Happy to share best practices, even in this virtual world that we're living in today, right? So the 3 strategic steps for us that worked really well was 1, really share your vision and your performance metrics goal with your providers as well as your internal stakeholders and your internal team. And it's really important. The second for us was partner with your provider, right? Drive KPI improvements and minimize risks by partnering with them. And then the third would really be create a strong compliancy culture by constantly interacting with them and communicating with them. It's really important.
Deb, CVS, where you took this formal approach, it's one of the largest retailers. What do you want people in the audience here who may not have, as large of an organization or as great a number of locations? What do you want them taking away from what you're about to share?
So I think the key resource and their key takeaway is for transforming your provider management is going to be technology, right? So technology is really what gives you that visibility into your provider service data. But if you don't have technology, being here at ServiceX and learning what ServiceChannel can do for you is really a great first step. If you have the technology with ServiceChannel and you want to develop a formal process like this, just know you can do something very similar to this. For us at CVS, at the scale of CVS, I was just one person. It took about 25% of my time for a little less than 3 months at the scale of CVS to get this stood up. But for those with a smaller company, it should take a little bit less time as well.
Great. And so having gone through the process, what did your experience at CVS tell you about why it was important to make that shift from tactical to strategic in managing providers?
And that's exactly the key word, right? When your providers understand the why behind your strategic vision and your company's long-term goal, that knowledge really leads them to provide better quality and cost of their services and to help minimize risk for you, right? They want to be part of the success because it also reflects on their success, right? They want to take ownership in that.
Great. So you talked about the sort of metrics and, what was the process like at CVS for deciding on those key metrics and how did you narrow those down?
We were in a great position for this with ServiceChannel. We had visibility into our service providers' performance data, and we had access to over 100 standard KPIs right out of the box with the technology. So as leaders of the organization, we sat down and we narrowed down those 100 to 9 that we knew were going to be how we measured our success. And then we even took those 9 and ranked those 9 as well. I'm sure the top 3 for us is going to be very much the same as other people. So top 3 for us was first time completion, right? So that was the first metric because it's important to have your providers go in and get it done as much as possible the first time with less disruption. And so the second is when that's not possible, what's the metric of an average full-time resolution for that provider? And then lastly, it's going to be around cost, right? What's your average invoice cost?
Great. And so once you picked those metrics out, once you kind of decided those were the ones that you wanted to focus on, how did you communicate those out with your providers?
The one thing that was really important is that we needed to really create that strong compliancy culture with our providers and with our internal teams. And we know we needed to do that through strong interactions and communications with them. And we also ensure that this same format and process was cascaded down to our internal teams so they could hold their business reviews in those same metrics and kind of that same format. So first, I had webinars. I held webinars strategically time zone wise. I had about 450 of our 600 providers who actually attended those webinars. And I really taught them about what our KPIs were, what was important, how they were being measured through those KPIs, and also how they could exceed in those KPIs. And that was really important to make sure that they knew up front this is what was happening. We also found it very important to have those conversations with new providers. And one of the other things that I wanted to really stress is it's important to bring in those business owners, not just your account reps, those business owners, because this is their business that you're evaluating. So they really need to be part of it for it to be successful. And so once we've communicated these metrics out, we also said this was going to be really the part of our business review that was going to be the most important, and that's what we'll be talking about during business reviews.
Great. I love what you did with, stakeholders, right? You talked about internal stakeholders in deciding on the metrics, and then you talked about, in communicating those metrics out. You also expanded the set of stakeholders on the provider side, and, I just think that was something really important that you did to sort of establish a mindset, establish a culture, establish kind of the consistency. It was really, really interesting to me. So, once you communicated those out, you said you were ready to kind of start having those business reviews. Let's talk about those actual reviews. What was your approach to doing them?
Yeah, and so, obviously, as we've been talking, you could tell our approach was about partnership and about transparency and our shared success, right? That was kind of the overarching approach. We made sure that the business reviews that we talked about are strategic and operational. We held in-person senior leadership business reviews with our top 10 providers in spend, because if you think about it, those top 25% of your providers, you're probably spending 50-60% of your expense with those specific vendors. So it's important to make sure that they align with your goals and your vision. And then the next tier down would be if there were providers that were outliers of our SLAs or our costs, that we wanted to really understand what was going on, what was happening there. And then, as I said, we would cascade that structure down to our internal teams so they could hold the same level of business reviews with their regional trade and providers.
Great. And so, you've talked a lot about partnership. What were some of the specific tips and what were some of the things you did to really have a two-way conversation, during these business reviews?
Yeah, and that's really important. That's really what it comes down to, right? Is that two-way conversation, right? So for us, the structure really was about having a business review template. Ours was probably about 10 or 12 pages long. It included things like, your KPIs, where your KPIs are. It included contract information, what's working, what's not working type of things. And send that out ahead of time. That's what we would do. Send it out ahead of time. Leave room in that template for them to fill out from their point of view, what they're seeing and what they want to talk about. And then use this as a guide, not a script, for your business reviews. Have ServiceChannel logged in, so you can look at and discuss maybe some dynamics around some things that are coming up that are part of your conversation, right? So one great example that I have is we had a business review with a particular provider who really wanted to really understand the average invoice. As they saw it in totality, right? We were looking at it more like, what's our capital average invoice? What's our catastrophic average invoice? What's our repair, right? Different categories. So that dynamic and conversation was great to have ServiceChannel open and looked at. Another really important thing, I think, is to keep these, right? Store these somewhere internally so others can look at them and refer to them, right? The subsequent year, bring them up, right? Look at the comparison of where they were last time, where they are this time, and really kind of celebrate together what those accomplishments have been. More than likely, part of that business review is they're going to want to learn how they can grow their business with you. Make that part of the conversation. Make it drive around data, right? One of the things that I've always kind of coined was, it's not about emotion and how it's about data, and really helping data drive that decision on where you grow businesses is really important. And then lastly, really listen to their recommendation. They are the eyes and ears for you at those locations. So they have some really great recommendations of things that can improve your process. So it's important to listen and have that two-way conversation, right? It really empowers your provider to take those appropriate measurements for you to help control your cost and to minimize risks like we're talking about. And it really ensures just excellent service and their value in the long run for you.
That's great, Deb. I love the approach that you took. Thank you for walking us through the structure from everything, around deciding on the metrics, because again, the metrics became kind of the focal point for the conversations as well. And then just the, level of communication and consistency that you had in terms of, having a process, around communicating this and just engaging all of your stakeholders. Great stuff, Deb. Thanks so much for sharing all these tips and insights.
Of course. Great talking to you, Vijay. Thank you.
I hope you enjoyed that conversation as much as I did. We've got one more today with James Hemsarth. Like Deb, James is from ServiceChannel, and like Deb, he's had deep experience in managing providers. In fact, he's still managing providers today as part of the ServiceChannel managed team that delivers a complete FM program for their clients. Our conversation is going to cover how he and the other members of the ServiceChannel managed team take advantage of the platform to keep provider conversations focused on things that really move the needle. James, thanks for joining us today. I love talking shop with you. You've got such an interesting background. Why don't we start by having you introduce yourself to the audience, tell them a little bit about what you've done in the past, what you do today.
Sure, Vijay. Thanks for having me. Yeah, so my past has been basically all facilities management. I spent about 7.5 years at Toys R Us, partly with the procurement department, but I spent most of my time with the facilities department. I was a regional facilities manager for the greater New York City area, which included all 5 boroughs, Long Island, and New Jersey. From then, I went to the broker side of things to help support clients like Toys R Us. So about 6 years there with a couple different brokers, and then after a short stint back on the client side with Apple on their provider team, I landed here at ServiceChannel. I'm able to leverage my knowledge and my expertise with the facilities maintenance world to help our Scout and SC Manage teams succeed. I now spend most of my time, basically all of my time, with the SC Manage team, managing work orders from end to end and developing and maintaining those provider relationships.
That's great. Yeah, the ServiceChannel managed team is off to a roaring start. So you've had some experience managing providers, with and without, the tools and insights from ServiceChannel. Like, what's the difference?
Yeah, just the power of the platform for one. I mean, there are a ton of differences, but we've managed many work orders with SC Managed already. As you said, it's come out of the gates quickly. But only about 10 to 20% of those do we actually need light touches, light intervention with to follow up with the store or the provider. And using all the tools like GPS check-in, vendor performance, scorecarding, everything at my fingertips really sets ServiceChannel apart from everywhere else that I've worked.
So I know you've got 3 tips to share from shifting out of kind of a tactical mode of provider management into something more strategic. Let's go through them one by one. You told me that the first tip is to start with great providers in the first place. Isn't that a little bit of cheating?
It's not. I wouldn't call it cheating. Everybody has access to this data if they're part of the Scout network. But it's a great shortcut that we have to understand who are the top quartile providers. We've had 20 years of being a facilities management platform, so we have all of the performance data. We know who's good and who's bad, and when we have a client looking for a specific need in a specific area, we're able to give that to them. Those top quartile providers all have high first-time completion, high check-in compliance, on-time arrival, average proposal turnaround time. I mean, every data point that we collect sets them apart and puts them into that top quartile. In addition to that, not only do we have the data, we also ensure that we don't set up the providers for failure. We want to make sure that they have enough technicians staffed, that they have a great overnight team, that they're licensed in their appropriate states, if they have satellite offices. We ask them 70, 80 questions to make sure that they're prepared to take on the new relationship before we match them. And I like to understand that too before I put them into the SC Managed network. We know what they're capable of after understanding the answers to all those questions, and their performance data really enables them to be part of our network.
Great. You mentioned this a little bit earlier. Let's dig into it a little bit more. Your second tip was really to maximize, the use of controls and the use of automation in the platform. Like, why is that important to you?
Yeah, the platform really enables everyone involved, whether you're a third party, you're ServiceChannel, you're the client, you're the technician, utilize the app or the platform to make sure everyone knows what's going on. It saves us so much time. now managing work orders, the last thing I want to do is wake up and look at my phone and see a work order that hasn't moved, and then make but make many phone calls, which would equal to millions after a year, to figure out what's going on. We empower our providers to use the app, to make proper updates, and we enable and empower our clients to check the platform too, to see what's going on. We're able to send notes, understand who's checked in, who's checked out, understand when parts are going to arrive, and it's an extremely powerful tool.
Let's dig in a little bit more. Like, what are some of the top controls and automation features like you're relying on most heavily to save time? I mean, I know there's a ton, but are there a few that stand out?
Yeah, there are a lot. One of the main ones that I can think of is our issues list, which is essentially a taxonomy of what went wrong on site. The more accurate we're able to get that issues list, the better off the client will be, because it will lead the right provider to their location. If it's an electrical issue, it'll say exactly where the issue is, whether it's back of house, exterior, sales floor, break room. If it's a plumbing issue, it'll say which restroom is the toilet clogged, which stall is the toilet clogged. It leads them right to where the issue is. If you're not specific enough, it could lead to some issues, and we work with the client on a pretty robust cadence to make sure that issue list is extremely accurate.
Great. And you mentioned when we were talking a little earlier, like you found managing the NTE capabilities was a big time saver as well. Talk to us a little bit about that.
Yeah, we work with the clients to ensure that the NTE that we give to our providers is competitive, will allow them to get the job done the first time. In the past, a higher NTE could lead to some extra hours being spent on site, or somebody rushing through the job because they don't want to have to bill over the NTE. With a higher NTE and our top quartile providers, we trust them, just like the client trusts us, to give a plumber a larger NTE so they can be on site for 3 or 4 hours and get the job done accurately, efficiently the first time. So it's great when we run reports, we look at all the data and say, what should the NTE be? We work with the client to make sure that it's where it should be to drive that first time completion. One of the others that I can think of is our GPS check-in. Over the years, I can't tell you how many times providers would say, hey, I spent a half an hour on site before the manager even came up to talk to me to give me access to their store phone to use the IVR. And that wastes their time. That's a half an hour back where they could be servicing another client, home with their families, whatever it may be. They're wasting time. With the GPS check-in, when they're within a specific range, their app will push a notification saying, hey, you're here. You want to check into 1, 2, 3, 4. When they do that, they can refamiliarize themselves with the scope and go right to the issue, fix it, and leave. The last thing the store wants to do or a restaurant, is to have somebody on site fixing something during a rush or just really ever. They want them in and out because they want to focus their time on sales and their customers.
Yeah, speaking of time, right? I mean, you just talked about how you're saving a lot of time, using the platform's capability. When we talked earlier, you said, well, what do you do with that extra time? Is you focus it on relationship building. Like, why is that important? And what are some of the things you do to do that?
Yeah, all of those top 3 features, as well as everything else, really saves time for me and my team. We're able to really focus on provider relationship, maintaining the relationships with our providers, using the millions and millions and millions points of data that we have. Not only that, we're able to just set up calls periodically with providers to develop personal relationships. I can't tell you how many providers I have in my cell phone, and they have my number in their cell phone. We're always available for each other because of the relationships that we've built. You can't just call a provider in the yellow pages and say, hi, I'm going to text you, or please text me when you're on site, right? But I can do it with my providers because of this. ServiceChannel has given me so much time. A couple anecdotal stories where just this past Sunday, I was out with my family getting breakfast, and there was an issue at a grocery store where we needed an electrician to be on site within 3 hours on a Sunday morning. facilities management isn't facilities management unless something goes wrong on a Sunday morning or a Friday night. So I was able to obviously check the app, see the work order was accepted, but I wanted to be able to provide the location with an update as via the app as a note. So I texted my technician on a Sunday morning, and she was basically happy to hear from me and giving me updates along the way that yes, my tech will be there on site at whatever time it was, 10 a.m. or something, and they were updating the app, updating the notes, and the store had full visibility. Another one, a couple years ago, I had a provider who I knew was working all day, likely had just gotten home, and we had another emergency when a client above our location had a flood, and it was starting to cause a lot of issues. I texted him also. He literally had to drop his fork and go to the site, and I don't think he would have gone without the relationship that me and my team were able to develop with him. So with the extra time, when you're faced with situations like that, it's really, really, really important to have great relationships with your providers.
That's great, and that just pays off, right? You take that time saved, you invested in relationship building, and it pays off like later on, pays dividends down the line. One of the things you and I talked about earlier was also how you have, a formal kind of, coaching program set up as well. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah. So as I said, ServiceChannel has millions of data points where we can track trends, negative or positive, and really give the provider the information that they might not have the time to get because they're on site all the time. We work with a lot of smaller providers that are basically out the door 10 hours, 12 hours per day. So when we see check and compliance go down or first time completion drop, I'm able to provide them with the information to say, hey, you went from a 93 to a 91. What's going on there? Make sure you use your phone. Just do whatever I can to drive that KPI up. First time completion are you not stocking the proper parts on your truck or your van? And remind them just to pick up, these onesie twosie things to make sure that they drive first time completion up. They're extremely appreciative of it. I look forward to the calls. I hope they look forward to the calls. And not only will this help them boost their KPIs for my account, but for all the accounts that they service within ServiceChannel. If they increase ours, then incrementally the other clients will go up too, and it'll just set them up for success in the future.
That's great. That's a great example, James, of kind of a win-win-win. Yeah, thanks for sharing your insights. About how you're using the platform to save time, how you're using that time to build relationships. I think a lot of the things that you're doing are exactly the things that are needed to just get away from a very tactical approach to provider management and focusing more on the relationship and a much more strategic approach. So thanks for sharing your insights, James.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thanks for joining us today. I hope the conversations with James and Deb have given you some practical insights you can apply to provider management. If you'd like help with sourcing top performers, please reach out to our Scout team who are ready to assist you in assessing your network. And if you'd like guidance on how to more effectively leverage ServiceChannel to manage the providers you already have, please reach out to your customer success manager who has a great view into best practices across all our customers.